I'm looking at amendments right now for the Land Development Code. And I want to make sure that I have them all. I have, and as I go through this, I'm also going to urge everybody, if you haven't given a copy of these to the clerk, if you would give a copy to the clerk so the clerk can post them onto the message board or the backup so that people can see them. What I have is the Amendment A from Councilmember Ellis and myself. From Councilmember Tovo, I have questions 1, 2, and 3. From Councilmember
I'm sorry, you're going to have to go slower for us.
I'm sorry. Again, I have
Okay.
The one from Councilmember Ellis and myself.
Okay.
Multi-pages. I have 3 from Councilmember Tovo. Question 1, question 2, question 3.
And a fourth.
And 4. I now have 4. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Is everybody caught up? All right. And then I have Councilmember Flanagan. Then from Councilmember Kitchen, I have 1 and 2 and 3.
Mayor,
Yeah.
I have another one coming. 3 and the next one will just be in case. So I went ahead and passed them out. So.
Okay. And then I have Councilmember Poole has 1 and then 2 through 4 combined.
Okay.
And then I have Councilmember Harper Madison has 1 and Councilmember Ellis has 1. Councilmember Tovo?
Councilmember Kitchen, I don't think I have any of yours.
Oh, you don't? We set them. We set them out at the very beginning.
They were on your next third.
I'll keep looking.
Okay.
Councilmember Cassar?
Mayor, we have not printed out the amendments that were posted by the Mayor Pro Tem and I, in part because after seeing your and Councilmember Ellis's post, it seems like you covered pretty much everything in ours. Ours went a little bit further in the transition zones, but given that it seems like we have to get to 6 or 7 votes to get something done, I think that it seems like the majority lands where your document is on those transition zones. So I won't be printing or passing that one out. The only thing that's in the Mayor Pro Tem's and mine are what are that don't have to do with the transition zone, are a couple of pretty small, I think, unobjectionable amendments as they relate to maximizing downtown. And we'll get that printed at some point through this process, but we just wanted to cut everything else out to not give you too much paper.
Yeah. Did you get
Okay.
number 2?
So let's do this.
Mayor,
Yes?
I have 2 simple amendments that I don't have ready to distribute. They're related to ensuring we capture affordable housing units as we map by right entitlements, but they're relevant depending on which proposal moves forward.
Okay. And this isn't locking down the number of amendments at this point. It's just trying to figure out what it is that we have on the dais to make sure that everybody has a copy of everything that's on the dais. I was just handed from Councilmember Kitchen, numbers 5 and 6. So I have 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. We don't have 4 yet? Is that right?
Yeah.
Just want to confirm that. Okay. That's
Sorry
fine.
about that.
No, that's
Going to be
okay.
a 4.
All right, what I'm going to do right here, what I thought we would do if we could do it, was what we did with the strategic mobility stuff is maybe there's some things that are in people's amendments that no one objects to, and so I'm going to take like a 5-10 minute recess for people to take a look at this now to go through to see if they're able to mark sections that they're okay going in. If you haven't had a chance to read it yet or you don't understand it, then just circle it and we just won't let it go in right now. But let's see if there are things that people can agree to that we can just kind of move off the plate. So the first thing we'll do is we'll kind of go through without discussing anything. We'll just say, does anybody have any objections to any on here? And if there are, we're just going to circle it and in our process we'll come back to it.
I think
Yes.
I think I understand what you're saying. So for each one of these amendments, we do that.
Right.
And then, so we're putting them in 2 buckets, which is what we did with the ASMP.
Correct.
Okay.
Same thing. Yes, Councilor Tovo.
I'm sorry, I need you to clarify. We're going to circle, I'm sorry, we're going to, would you mind saying that again? And
I'm gonna
also, I
begin-
think
I'm
that
gonna
our
begin-
recess should be longer.
I'm just going to go through this. I'm going to begin by saying Adler-Ellis Amendment A. And I'll go through each amendment in turn, but I'll start with that. And I'll say there are 3 changes on page 1. Does anybody have any objection to those? And if no one has an objection, then they'll be incorporated. Otherwise, we're just going to circle it, and then we'll come back to it. Then I'm going to we're just going to do that for all 5 pages, and then we'll go to the next amendment, ask the same question, just like we did on the transportation deal.
So I think one thing I would ask is that we recess for more than 5 or 10 minutes because I think it's going to take us, I would say, at least 15 to kind of read through the amendments. And
Okay.
2, I would just throw out there that in some places the amendments play off each other, and
Yeah.
so to the extent that they've been separated by question, I would suggest that we look at all the amendments for question 1, at all the amendments for question 2. I mean, there are some, as I mentioned in my post last night, by the time I finished mine, you all had done yours, and there may not even be a reason in some cases for me to bring forward mine if one of the others is, if we can lay out all the amendments for one, that might make moot some of the other ones or
Okay.
make unnecessary some of
I
the
hear
other
that.
ones.
Let me see how the first part goes. That's not how we did it on the mobility deal, and I recognize that. I think that
It's a
if we
wildly
go
different
through them each
document.
individually, it brings up the issue, and people could amend that issue at that point by bringing in any amendments that they had elsewhere. But my hope is, honestly, to try to get through the Adler-Ellis amendment first after we've done this, because I think that'll take a lot of things off the table, or at least point us in the right direction. Yes, Councilor Arthur?
I would also say we need more than 5 minutes because
so let's
things
take-
were posted at 2 in the morning and whatnot. And
Okay. All right, so let's take 15 minutes. We'll come back here at,
That's not enough.
people need more than 15 minutes? So that's what you said, 15 minutes. I mean, a lot of these things I think we've already seen.
Mayor?
All right, let's come back at 20 till, and then we'll see where we are.
Mayor?
Yes.
I would just mention that in that 20 minutes, we probably won't be able to accomplish much, and then we'll have to stop for citizen communication. So maybe we take the time up to noon, come back for citizen communication, and use that time then after citizen communication and possibly lunch to be prepared so that we are sufficiently prepared. And I
My
think
thought is that if people did that and we could touch base with each other, we might learn something in that 20 minutes about procedure so that people might better spend the time over lunch and executive session. So I'd like us to come back at 20 till. People might say, now that we've actually looked at them for 15 minutes, we need 2 hours. Or people would come back and say, we've actually gone through it and I think that we're okay. But I would like us to touch base now before 2 so that we get a little bit more direction before we find out what we're doing.
So,
Okay?
Mayor, one last thought. My thought is if we have a bit more time, we might end up with less sections that we have to mark.
Might be. So let's come back at 20 till, and if that's the sense of the council at that point after people have looked at it, then we can certainly do that. We'll be back here at 20 till noon. We're in recess. All right, we are back. It is 11:48. I will concede that there's not enough time for us to go through and identify, but I think the process is still right. When we come back from lunch, we'll go through, as we said, just basically running through them, not discussing them, but to see what stays in and what we need to, either we object to or we want to discuss. And we'll identify those, and then we will start and go through the Adler-Ellis Amendment A, and then we'll go through them successfully. People can make amendments to these. We'll vote the things up and down.
Could I make a suggestion, or make sure I'm understanding? So we're going to go through the Adler-Ellis Amendment A.
Correct.
And decide what we need to put in the bucket of talking about more. I would suggest we go.
When we do the talk about bucket more, we're going to go through all of them. We're going to go through.
Well, I know, but I'm just talking about what order to go through.
Okay.
We go through the Amendment A first. Then I would suggest you go through Councilmember Flanagan, Harper Madison, and Renteria's next, because there's more council members on that. Then you could go through mine after that, and then we could start going through the individual ones, if that makes sense to you.
I'll take a look at that over lunch.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so we're back up. We do have some people. Let's see if there's some people who might want to talk to us who are here. Give them a chance to do that if they want to. Let's see here. Is Stuart Hirsch here? I'm going to call the list. If I call your name and you're not here, you are not giving up the opportunity to speak. Is Mr. Pena here? What about Mr. Montgomery? Mr. Montgomery, you want to come on down? You win the prize. You get to speak before lunch. I have some time donated to you from Becky Montgomery. Is she here? All right. You have 5 minutes.
The president of the Judges Hill Neighborhood Association. As a reminder of where that is, it's bordered by Lamar on the west and MLK on the north, 15th Street on the south, and Rio Grande on the east side, which will tell you why the talk about automatic upzoning around transportation corridors piques our interest. We're an interesting neighborhood, only 4 by 5 blocks in size. But in that small area, we have 23 historically designated homes. 9 of those are Texas landmarks, and 2 of those are National Registered Historic Homes. The downtown Austin plan recognized Judges Hill as an historic tree canopy gem that brings value and character to downtown Austin and should be protected. But in an effort to tell you something different from what you've already heard, maybe sometimes over and over, I'm going to talk today about something that surprised us. Amidst all of those historic homes, we have a surprising amount of what you've termed as missing middle housing. Surprised us when we did a walkthrough through the neighborhood. We have 2 duplexes, 17 garage apartments, 5 basement apartments, 112 condos, both small and large apartment buildings that add up to 216 units, and a vegetarian student co-op with 8 bedrooms and 8 very nice residents. I think you have to eat meat to be a loud, bad neighbor. And that, by the way, may be the most affordable housing in downtown Austin, that student co-op. There is not a chance that the open market would replicate that much missing middle housing if you turn developers loose on us. 348 total units. To the councilwomen who have shown that they recognize the value and importance of downtown neighborhoods to the city of Austin, Judges Hill would like to say thank you. We appreciate your support very much. On the other side of the ledger, to those who are on the other side of the debate, I'd like you to please consider not only what we gain in a new code, and we recognize that we will gain a lot, but also what we might lose that would be irreplaceable. Historic homes and a huge amount of missing middle housing. I'd ask that you work with neighborhoods. We have demonstrated in the past an ability to work effectively with the city. We worked long and hard on the downtown Austin plan. We made significant concessions in upzoning in that process. That was not an easy discussion within our neighborhood. The easiest things for neighborhoods to do is just say no and dig their feet in. But we have not demonstrated that that's what we do. The downtown Austin plan has resulted in significant increases in housing, especially to the north side of us in West Campus area and to the east of us. Thanks for your attention.
Okay. Is Scott Turner here?
Hello, Mayor and Council. As you deliberate today about how to solve our housing crisis, please keep in mind who needs that housing. We do need 60,000 affordable units as quickly as possible, but we need even more housing for average Austinites. Our community heroes, teachers, firemen, policemen, can't afford to live here. They have good jobs, but they can't afford a single-family home when the median price is $375,000. If we're going to solve our housing crisis, we need more housing that average Austinites can afford. Missing middle housing is more affordable. Missing middle housing is workforce housing. And missing middle housing is compact and connected. So missing middle housing should be a priority today. Please consider that in your deliberations so that average Austinites can afford to live here again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is Hank Smith here? What about Adam Greenfield? Why don't you come on down? David King is on deck.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. My name's Adam Greenfield. I'm on the board of Walk Austin. And I want to thank you for restarting this conversation. We think, the Walk Austin board thinks that the city manager's memo was a great direction for us to head in. And a lot of what you've been saying, we strongly support that. So keep going. I don't want to repeat things that you've already heard before. So the board wanted me to communicate a couple of points that maybe we think could be elevated in this conversation. And the first one is perhaps on the subject we've heard before about mandatory parking minimums. The Walk Austin board recommends ending these across Austin. One of the common fears that people have about development is it's going to lead to more traffic and they're right because of mandatory parking minimums. But on top of that, there's another element we think should be raised, which are gated subdivisions. We think that the new land development code should ban such developments. Other cities have actually banned gated subdevelopments. They're antithetical to community, they discourage walking, and they channel traffic onto a small number of arterial roads. It's definitely a direction that we should be ending very quickly. Another element that we think should be raised in the conversation is the quality of the buildings we create. I think one of the reasons why many of the people in Austin are so development phobic is because they're seeing when there is development, it's not good stuff. It's soulless, it's banal, and it doesn't last very long. It gets torn down in 30 years. Quality development is not just an aesthetic, although aesthetics are important for preserving a neighborhood's sense of pride and preserving property values. Quality development is also an affordability issue. If we keep building buildings that only last for 30 years, the residents, the occupants of those buildings are constantly paying for the costs of the building that just got built. We need buildings that last for 100 years. We need buildings that have a character that fits in with the Austin's historic character. I don't hang out much on East 6th Street, but it is clearly the finest we have. I think if the people of Austin knew that we could build buildings like that and streets like that again, they would get excited about development. And we want to see that brought back. We want to see Austin reach the heights it has previously reached. Lastly, I want to just encourage you to vote for a land development code that allows everyone to have everything they need within a 10-minute walk. Thank you very much.
The last speaker we'll take before we do citizens communication is David King.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members, and thank you for your service to our community. And I want to start off by saying I think what you're doing, this process of establishing these policies, is the right process to be doing. And I appreciate you stepping up to the plate to address these difficult policy issues head on. I believe that was one of the failures of our previous attempt at a land development code rewrite. So I think this is the right process. I may not agree with all the policies, but I will tell you about a few of the policies I think you should take a look at and incorporate. And I don't think that this is an either or. I think we can do all of the above. We can have a place for everybody. We can have affordability. We can have equity. We can have diversity. It's not either or. It's all of the above. So the proposed broad-based land development policies are among the most profound in Austin's 179-year history. If enacted, they will affect every person, every property, every business in Austin for the next 50 years or longer. And once enacted, they cannot easily be retracted if we find they're not doing what we want. Once you grant the entitlement, you cannot go take it back. So I'm asking that you be deliberate in your discussion of these policies and not try to hit an arbitrary deadline if we got to do it by tonight or next week, but that we get the policy right, even if it takes another meeting or two to get the policy right. We complain that the legislature gives us very few tools to help us address these issues of displaced low-income families, displaced communities of color, and small local businesses, and a market that has provided virtually no affordable housing to low-income families and made Austin among the most economically segregated cities in the U.S. My concern is that these broad-based policies of granting these entitlements, these development entitlements, with no community benefits in return, it's giving away that tool. It's basically putting that tool aside and not using that tool. Yet it is the most important tool that we have to use. So that's really my main point is let's not give away these entitlements. These entitlements are worth billions of dollars today. That can translate into trillions of dollars over the next 10 to 20 years of impact on our city and on our families and businesses here. That's why I think we should be careful and deliberate. My concern is that some of the policies will incentivize the demolition of most existing or older affordable workforce housing and small single-family homes in Central and East Austin neighborhoods. These demolitions will accelerate the displacement of low and middle-income families and small local businesses in these neighborhoods. And I know you care about that. So I'm asking that you incorporate those policies to help stabilize those neighborhoods, help prevent the displacement,
Thank you.
and help
Thank you, Mr.
our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Flanagan.
So I just wanted to thank you, David, for being positive and acknowledging what I think we've all acknowledged is that the process that we went through the last time struggled because we didn't do this and really set out our objectives from the beginning. Thank you. Also, I just wanted to note just a couple of things that we heard just so far, because this is really important, and I want to make sure the community is understanding what we are and are not doing. So to Mr. Montgomery, you referenced historic structures. I have not heard anyone in the community say we would touch or change historic zoning. It's not been proposed, not by me, not by anyone. And I think part of the challenge is, as I was engaging with a constituent, they would say, well, we didn't hear that in the media. We didn't hear in the media what you were going to do about historic structures. Well, because we kind of already agree. And so the media is not necessarily going to cover the stuff that's straightforward and simple where we agree. They're going to cover the stuff where there's debate. So I just wanted to reassure you on that. And also this notion that we are going to turn developers loose. Obviously, we're not eliminating zoning. We're not eliminating building codes. Nobody's getting turned loose. And I'm glad to hear that Judges Hill at one point did accept, in a collaborative process, upzoning their neighborhood. I'm going to go back and track that down. Part of my issue with the NCCDs is that when you look at the Hyde Park ordinance, it was primarily about downzoning properties in that neighborhood, and it's in the list, right? It went from MF4 to SF3, MF4 to SF2, SF3 to SF2, kind of all through that ordinance. And the gentleman from Walkability, I think, did a good job in noting that a lot of the stuff that we're frustrated about is the result of the current code. And so when folks see things they don't like now, we should be working together to make sure we don't get the things we don't like and that we get the things that we do like. And I just want to remind everybody that getting housing is a community benefit. We need the housing. That is a community benefit. So I'm not going to do this after every speaker, Mayor, because I also want us to finish today. But I just think it's important that, as we've tried to do on Tuesday and not incite kind of elevated emotions, that we're being very clear about the measured and thoughtful process we're trying to go through.
Mayor.
Yes.
And I don't want to put words in Mr. Montgomery's mouth, but I think what he was trying to highlight is that in areas like Judges Hill, not every house may have a historic marker, but you're dealing with areas of town that are some of our very oldest in the city. And so as we're looking at the land development code, it's important to keep that in mind, because certainly rezoning areas that have lots of historic houses, though they may not be landmarked, if they're not landmarked, they don't have the protection of zoning, and they are then vulnerable to redevelopment. And the other very important point he was raising is that within that very small area, you have a substantial number of housing units, and I think that's not always recognized and acknowledged.
And those homes would be vulnerable to redevelopment now if they're not historically designated.
I'm excited.
But less so if they have zoning that is changed. I mean, right now they are, I would need to look again back at the Judges Hill zoning, but many of those houses that are duplexes or single family are zoned single family. If they become zoned in a transition, if they become part of a transition zone that is rezoned and upzoned, we have incentivized the redevelopment of those structures.
Sure, and I was mostly just reacting to what we heard testimony about, things that had designations and had historic markers.
Got it. All right. A prelude of things to come, I'm sure. And we'll get through it all.